Good morning, everyone. Morning. Anyone? Did anyone enjoy the party last night? Yeah. Okay. Good. Keith, were you there? Okay. Hey, my name's Tom Johnston. I am one of the business development managers in the cloud economics team. We're a team, and we've got some other members here I'd like to introduce you to, so that if you have questions afterwards that I can't get to, you can ask them. So, Emil Carl Alfaro, Mario, Keith Jarrett. So, and Kevin Watt as well. So we're happy to answer your questions afterwards. Our goal is to help you understand and realize the economic benefits of the AWS platform. Two key words there are understand, you know what's going on, you can explain it to someone else. Realize, you save money, right? That's what we're here to talk about. We've got 2 demos of some tooling coming up. The genesis of this presentation was a year ago when we were talking to a CIO, one of our customers, who said, hey, we moved to AWS because we knew we were going to save money. And that was great. But we're staying because of what else it does. So we're going to walk through today how AWS can not only help you save money, but move quickly, scale based on market needs, allow you to do differentiated innovation, in other words, to innovate in areas that are particular to you, and to leverage what you already have. And we'd like to help you put some numbers on these if we can. It can be difficult and challenging to do, and sometimes the best way is by example. So the agenda is we're going to talk about how you frame business value, how you talk to other people in your organization about the business value of moving to the cloud and to AWS. Then we're going to do a deep dive on our TCO calculator, talk about a framework for evaluating costs, both on-premise or in a colo and on AWS. We'll spend a fair amount of time there and give you a nice demo of our online calculator. Then we're going to look at business value in action. By that I mean some case studies of real-life customers like you who've moved to AWS and how that went for them and what sort of business value they saw in the move, in addition to saving money. So it's both saving money and then the other things. When you start to think about the value of moving to AWS, start with your goals, right? Moving to AWS is a great thing to do, but you should do it for a reason. What are some of those reasons? Well, in the middle, reducing our overall cost is a high priority. Okay. Or we want to move our core business forward. Moving your core business forward is probably a growth objective. It might be a profitability objective, right? Growth might be growth while keeping your unit costs down. We're looking to improve performance and expand globally in a flexible way. Okay? Improve performance, there's some key metrics that they track. Expand globally. So maybe they're not in the Japanese market and they want to go there. Maybe they're not in Europe. Maybe they're not in Australia and they want to move there. Maybe not in Latin America. Maybe it's coming to the US. But start with what your business strategic goals are. Okay? Then ask yourself, how would saving money help you accomplish that goal? If you're looking to reduce your unit costs or looking to increase your profitability, there you go. How would moving quickly help you save money? One of the benefits of moving quickly is you can adjust to what happens in the market. So if there's a lot of competition, a lot of change in your market, moving quickly is probably a good thing. How would scaling based on market needs help you? Well, that's huge if you're bringing a new product to market and you don't know what your demand will be. Or maybe you know that you have very spiky demand, right? You're a retailer and you know that Q4 is a big deal for you. Well, how do you scale to meet that need? If innovating is something you need to do, if you need to get new products to market, you want to focus on those new products, those new innovations, not on doing things that someone else can do for you. And leveraging what you already have, right? You've got people, you've got assets, you've got intellectual property. How do you take advantage of those when you move to accomplish your business goals? Okay, now I'm going to cut to the chase. Here's the end point. Moving to AWS creates value. This is the result of an IDC study that they did. We'll talk about this more later on. But the highlights are the 5-year ROI for a company moving to AWS was 560%. Of the applications that these customers ran, the average was $1.5 million saved with a 5.5-month payback period. Now, the benefits per application came in 3 categories: business productivity and risk mitigation, IT staff productivity gains, and IT infrastructure cost reduction. So you can see that business value isn't just saving money, it's also things like improving productivity for your IT staff, improving your business's productivity, and risk mitigation. Quick example of difference between these two. Let's say it used to take you 2 to 3 weeks to go support a new initiative, or 2 to 3 months, and now you can do it in 1 day. Well, your IT staff is probably more productive, but your business is more productive. We'll dive into this with a real-life example in a few minutes. Okay, now what we're going to do is dive deep into costs. One of the things to remember is that comparing TCO is not easy. Anyone here in the previous session in this room? Okay, we're going to put up that grid that they showed, and then we're going to dive deep into that, okay? The key thing with TCO, it's two things. What categories do you include or exclude, and what assumptions do you make? Those are the two things to remember. Okay, now first of all, how can it be possible that AWS can do things cheaper than someone running their own data center? Okay? What you see on the left-hand side is on-prem, traditional data center, bare metal, no virtualization, probably not really aggressively run in terms of productivity and cost control. It's a mix of CapEx and OpEx spending. And just by virtualizing and running IT aggressively in terms of using ITIL and best practices, you can take a lot of cost out and get some real efficiencies. But if you move to the AWS public cloud, you can save more money. And why is that? One answer is scale. We operate at tremendous scale. That scale allows us to do volume purchasing. We're highly automated, and we have an optimized supply chain. Our supply chain is optimized actually for availability first and cost second. That means we're always going to have the capacity for you. But those guys know how to run a railroad. They're very good at it, and they're able to both deliver the availability you want and the cost savings you want as well. The second thing is that we have very high utilizations, right? For example, the top mobile apps in Nigeria, and by the way, Nigeria is mainly a mobile apps market. If you want to buy a car, if you want to find a job, that's all done with a mobile app. Many of those run in our US East data center. Well, they run in the middle of the night when most of North America is asleep. That's one example of how we're able to correlate, to run non-correlated workloads, which gives us a higher utilization and lower average cost. The other thing is that we build our own stuff. The servers that we build for you do not have any features that don't add value to you. So we're not charging you for things you don't need or use. We're very aggressive at getting high-quality, low-cost designs. We directly buy the components for these, and we control the network protocol and hypervisor levels, which again allows us to do a lot of things that add value to you. Now let's take a look at that grid. The rows are server costs, storage costs, network costs, and IT labor costs. Sounds pretty straightforward. The columns are your hardware cost, your software, your admin costs, and then your overhead costs. Quick show of hands, how many people here know what it costs them to run a rack per month in their own data center? That's pretty good. How about folks Nicolo? Okay. So, by the way, just for the sake of having to have an estimate, we estimate it's in North America, it's about $1,500 per month per rack if you're in your own data center and power's on top of that. That's our estimate. If you're in a colo facility, it's going to be more, and that's going to vary whether you're on the East Coast or if you're in the West Coast. The West Coast, for example, the San Francisco market's fairly expensive. But you have to compare all these things. So let's dive into those. On the server hardware side, you're buying servers. You're going to buy them from Dell, HP, or some other vendor. You're going to put them on a rack, cable them up. You've got your power distribution units, your top-of-rack switches. You've probably got some spare servers, right? If you're buying 500 servers, some of those will likely fail over the course of 3 years. Not many, but the odds are a few will. You've also got any virtualization software that you might buy, VMware. You might be paying for an OS from Microsoft or another vendor. You've got some maintenance on those. Oh, and you also have maintenance on the hardware. Let's drop one level. On the storage side, you've got hardware. And so you're buying disks. But the disks aren't enough, right? You've got to do some RAID. You've got some factors for whatever operating system's running there. And if you truly want reliable and redundant storage, you need to be in another location as well, right? So if you truly want to make sure that someone can get the data whenever they need to, being in one DC is probably not enough because a DC can go down, right? So there's a cost there. You also have your admin costs. On the network side, this is all your layer 2, layer 3 gear. I'll tell you in our model, we don't break that out by exactly what's going on. We use a percentage, and that's actually best practice from Forrester as well. So these are the components of the model. The next question is, what assumptions do you make? So we've talked about what's in there, right? Let's notice what's not in there, right? We're not up at the application level. We don't include database in this. You could, for sure, but in our standard model, we don't have it. Now, what are some of the issues with doing capacity planning and TCOs if you're looking at a traditional data center? The first is that things come in chunks, by which I mean you've got a data center and you've got room for racks, and maybe you use all those rooms and maybe you don't. Racks have so many U's. Once they're filled up, you need another one. And filled up can either be you use all the space or you use all the power capacity. And so when you decide to expand, it's very hard to expand on a linear basis, right? You expand in blocks, right? Now the problem is, if you run out of room for your blocks, right? It's fairly cheap to add another server, fairly cheap to add another rack, not cheap to add another data center, right? Not cheap to add another colo facility. If you have to move to a new geography, let's say you're in the US today, you want to be in Singapore as well, you have to set up a set of business relationships in Singapore, right? And you have to do vendor selection and all the things associated with that. The other issue is that your costs are never in sync. Who here depreciates their storage over how many years? 5 years? 5 years? 3 to 5? Okay. What do you do for servers, sir? Sorry? Do you depreciate your servers in the same schedule? 3 years, okay. So 3 years for servers and sometimes 5 years for storage? Okay. So those things are never in sync. So if you have one application, you might be buying servers every 3 years, storage every 5, and it's only in 15 years that they line up, right? Well, maybe your AC is on a 12-year schedule. Maybe it's on a 20-year schedule. Your building's probably on a 20-year schedule, maybe 50. So your costs are never in sync, and you can have the situation where you're always upgrading one element of your infrastructure, but you're never getting everything new, which makes it difficult to model what your costs really are. The other thing is that stuff just happens, right? Someone leaves, there'll be some inefficiencies, your power costs may spike, you may enter into a long-term power contract, and then the cost of oil goes down, and if you're pulling from a oil-fired power station, your costs should go down and you're stuck with high costs. Or it can go the other way, right? It's very unpredictable. So now let's take a look at our TCO calculator. This is available on the website. I'm just going to, excuse me, I'm going to switch to that. Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay, pretty clear? Okay. So the URL for this is awstcocalculator.com. And this is actually built by Amilcar and his team. We've got two modes, basic and advanced. We're going to look at the advanced mode here for a second. Okay? We are using the US dollar, and we're comparing to an on-premises environment. You can also do co-location as well. And our assumption is that this is going to run on the East Coast of the United States and Northern Virginia. You can pick other locations as well. We'll do that one for the demo. So let me show you which ones they have. So you can see all those locations here. And we're looking at a bare metal comparison. You can also compare to virtual machines as well. Both are supported. So what I've done here is pre-populated the set of servers to compare to a front end, mid-tier, and back end. So we've got 8 front end servers, 4 mid-tier, and 2 back end with varying amounts. Let's see, oh, it works. 16, 128, or 256 gigabytes of memory, utilizations of 82, 96, and 100, and we're optimizing, I'll explain that in a second, by compute, by memory, and by storage I/O. What this means is this is hinting to help the calculator select the proper set of AWS instances to use. So we'll probably see a C series here. What happened to the? We'll see a C series for the front end, an R series for the mid-tier, and then probably an I or D series for the back end. On the storage side, we believe this application is going to need 200 terabytes of NAS. Then we're going to back a third of it up a month, and we need 3,000 IOPS for this application. Now, data center bandwidth. How much data center bandwidth does this have? We're assuming it has 4 megabits a second with a peak to average ratio of 2. So in other words, the average would be 2 megabits a second, but we can go up to 4. And we're assuming it costs $125,000 on a fully burdened basis for our IT techs, and that one IT tech can manage 100 servers per person. Those are the assumptions we've made. They're all changeable. We'll go ahead and calculate our TCO here. And you can see for this application, you would save 39% by moving this to AWS. That's a nice number. You will typically see a number between 26% and about 49%. Some numbers will be higher, some will be lower, but those are typical ranges you should expect to see. We can talk about the drivers there. So when you look at it, you can see here that the servers are going to save you roughly, not much money. The servers are about the same, okay? But the storage, there's quite a bit of savings in the storage, and we can talk about why that is in a second. Your network savings are substantial because a lot of the networking costs are built into the EC2 charges, and there's some modest savings in IT labor as well. As we expected, if you look on the right, you can see that we got a C series, a C32 extra large for our compute layer, our front end, an R34 extra large for our mid-tier, and for our back end, we have 2 I28 XLs. Those are purchased using partial upfront RIs on a 3-year basis. We believe a 3-year RI is the most apples-to-apples comparison to buying hardware gear from a vendor as well. Now, if you go down towards the bottom of this, you can see the details and all the calculations. So you can actually see what we estimate the unit cost is for each of those servers. So $5,200 for the front end list, $6,600 for the mid-tier, and $8,800 for the database servers. But we've applied a 25% discount because we don't believe you would pay list prices from whomever you bought them from. Okay? We can show you the peak power consumed, the server hardware maintenance charge, which we estimate to be 15% of your charges there, your rack chassis costs, your PDU, top-of-rack switches, provision for spares, and all the categories there. Likewise, we have the same for storage costs, what you pay for a raw gigabyte, the OS, the capacity taken up by the OS, the usable capacity based on RAID 10, and everything through there. We do the same thing for your on-premises network costs compared to the AWS data transfer costs, and then for IT labor costs as well. So it's all there. We'll also show you what the assumptions that we made were as well in terms of everything there. All the assumptions are fully documented. And additionally, some assumptions can be modified online. So what the list prices are for your physical servers, your storage costs, and other things there are all listed. This can be downloaded and printed out and shared with anyone in your organization. You can go back and modify it and change it and run some scenarios. So we're really proud of the work that the team has done here, and we hope you'll find it helpful. I'd be happy to take questions on this at the end of the session. Okay. So let's go back to the presentation. Okay. Now, a few things to point out, and we'll take a look at this later. Even after the initial deployment, AWS is going to continue to help you drive down your costs. What do I mean by that? Well, one is that with AWS, when things are upgraded, because we're a service, the upgrade just happens. You don't have to apply it, for example. One example of this is we came out with a new service called CloudTrail. Anyone here use CloudTrail? Great. Everyone should, by the way. Right? CloudTrail gives you visibility into all the APIs that are called against your deployment. So you can see what's going on. We don't charge for it, just a modest charge to store those log files in a bucket. Anyway, you just get that. You don't have to pay anything for it. You don't have to deploy it. You don't have to install it in your system. All of a sudden, you get this information. Right? That's one example of additional value AWS provides for you. Another example is that our managed services, for example, eliminate many operational tasks. So let's say that you are running MySQL. Who here is running MySQL? Any one of you run MySQL on your own and do a replicated version of it? Okay, takes about 100 steps. So let's say you're running RDS on us and you decide, hey, you know what, I'm happy with it, I now want to replicate it. It's one mouse click versus 100 steps. So even after you're on us, you'll see that you'll find additional savings beyond the initial TCO. One new announcement we made this week that we believe will help you save money is called EC2 Dedicated Hosts. This is a physical server with instance capacity dedicated for your use. Now, why is this important? One big reason this is important is it enables you to bring your own licenses into an EC2 deployment. You can see the number of sockets and cores that you have on a host that supports your instances, and you can control and reuse this physical server for as long as you have it. This is important because many ISVs require you to know the details of your physical servers if you want to bring the licenses that you've paid for and use those on EC2. And in the past, we didn't give you that information. Well, we heard from you and other customers that you wanted to bring your own licenses. So this lets you save money by taking a commercial license from another vendor and deploying it on AWS. Now, one customer, and your mileage may vary, but one customer saved 42% by using their own licenses. So this is another example of how innovation by AWS is going to help you save money over time by helping you continue to drive down your costs. Now, anyone here have some challenges in tracking and predicting their costs in AWS? Just a few people? Joe? Okay. Okay. Oh, I have a really nice demo of how we do this. I know not everyone has problems, but let's do the demo anyway, okay? So, let's see. So what we're looking at here is the billing and cost management dashboard for my personal AWS account that I use for my work. And you can see that my bill in September was $316 a month to date. Wow, it's, what is today, the 8th? I've spent $211 already. And the bill forecast is now $530. I'm a little confused. I mean, like, I've been spending not a lot of money, now it's going to go up. What's going on, right? Add a few zeros at the end, and my CFO might get concerned. So what can we do, right? We can take a look at Cost Explorer and find out using our forecasting and budget. Oh, excuse me. One thing, I'll come back to it. And you can see here's my spending the past few months, right? About $175, $180 in July and August, spiked to over $300 in September, and then a really wide range of forecast for October. This is the same forecasting model that AWS uses to predict what our own infrastructure needs are, okay? We look at your past spending, and then look at what services you're using and estimate what you'll be using going forward. And so you can see the most likely forecast is actually, using this algorithm, is lower than what I'm spending today, but there's a possibility it will be very large. And you can see as we go out forward into the future, that is even larger as well. Now what's interesting is you can set alarms and alerts on these. So you can show you can set alarms. I have a billing alert here. Let's take a look at that. So that it will show you, what the information is. So here I've set an estimated charges over 300 for 6 hours. So if you want to know is your spending getting out of whack, you can do that. Now you can also set a budget. And you can say, I want to have, here we go. I want to create a budget. And when I'm within, say, 80% of my budget target, I want to have an alarm, or if I want my overall spend to be below a certain number, or here I have a budget that's set on EC2, right? My budget for EC2 is $375. The current forecast is $250 or so. I'm currently at $209. So this gives me some predictability as to what's going on, and if, actually not just predictability, but it warns me if things are not what I expect. So it's a great tool. I encourage you to use it. If there's one takeaway from the session, if you're not using Cost Explorer, forecasts, and budgets, I'd encourage you to do that. Okay. Now, let's switch for a second and look at how, look at how some customers have experienced or enjoyed these, the savings that we talked about. One of these is a customer named JobVite. JobVite is a SaaS provider in the employment space. They work with large folks who are trying to hire people, and they work with a lot of users like you and me that maybe want a job. They moved to AWS. Now, you can see in the second bullet that they saved money, right? They expected to save 15 to 20%. They actually saved 35%. But they also had one of those other benefits we're talking about, one of those business value benefits of increasing availability and uptime to 99.98%. How would you put a number on what that uptime increase looks like? Well, if you're talking to a customer, right, you don't go down, the customer has a better experience. If you're talking to a user, someone trying to upload their resume, that user uploads your resume to your site and not to someplace else. I can't put a number on that for you without knowing the details of your business, but there's some real value there, in addition to saving 35%. Now, let's talk about moving quickly. Who here has a deadline? Come on, Keith. Yeah, I know you got a deadline. Okay. If you're moving fast, you have a better chance of hitting your deadlines. And then you can use that time to focus on what separates your business from something else. You also get faster turns. What do I mean by this? Well, let's think about it. Let's say I'm building a new car and Keith's building a new car. And it takes me 5 years to get a new car out the door, and it takes him 4. After 20 years, guys, Keith's built a new car that's a generation ahead of me, and I've got an old car that's competing with his old one, right? Faster turns are huge. If you're trying to come out with new functionality for your users and you can do it in 4 months instead of 5, that's a big deal, right? If you can do it in 3 months instead of 4, instead of getting 3 releases a year, you're getting 4 releases. Now, I don't want to tell you that moving to AWS is all you need to do to get faster turns, but we are certainly an enabler of that, okay? The other thing is it means you have fewer long and large projects. I'd encourage you to split up your projects into something smaller, more manageable. There's some empirical data that's going to describe why we want to do that. Long and large projects are more likely to exceed their budget. That makes sense, right? Okay? Well, how much, right? Projects that are over $15 million, and this is according to McKinsey, cited by The Economist, they typically run 45% over budget. So make your projects shorter, smaller, and cheaper. Okay? They're more likely to run late, 7% over time. Okay, so we're now, on average, 45% over budget and 7% over time. Okay, that's not good. And they're more likely to fail to deliver the full value. Those projects, they're 45% over budget, they're 7% over time, and they're delivering half of the predicted value. There's a lot of reasons that can be true. Like a long project that takes 2 years to deliver, your environment may change in 18 months, your users may want something else. So there's lots of reasons for that to be true. But AWS, by helping you move faster, by helping you move cheaper, is more likely to get what you want. Now, the other thing is that each additional year in a project boosts the likelihood of missing targets by 15%, right? So everything you can do to speed up a project, AWS's speed of provisioning as an example, will help you. Now, how much is this worth? Well, McKinsey identified $66 billion in cost overruns over 5,400 projects. How much of that can you save, right? Real benefit to being smaller projects that go faster, that don't have as big a budget. Part of this is the benefits of failing fast. If something's not going to work, you want to find out right away. Let me give you an example of this. One of our customers, Hess, was moving from an on-premise infrastructure to AWS, and they weren't sure exactly how to architect it. And they worked with us, and they came up with several proposals of approaches that would work, several instance types, for example, in EC2. And they would go try it. They'd run it for a few days, and if it didn't work, they would try another one. And they did some trial and error until they find the right thing. Imagine trying to do that if you have to go out and buy lots of servers from your vendor. They take weeks to arrive. If it doesn't work, can you return it? Maybe, maybe not. With AWS, you try it for a few days. If it doesn't work, you shut it off. If it does work, you go ahead and buy a reserved instance and save some money. So AWS brings you immediate provisioning. We let you try it. If it doesn't work, we let you iterate. When it does work, we let you get big immediately. So once you have the architecture that works, you can use some of our automation tools, for example, CloudFormation. You design your virtual private cloud, you identify the servers, identify all the connections, and then boom, you can replicate that. You can replicate that to anywhere in the world we run in the matter of minutes. You can also use our quick starts, our drive times, and our partners to help you move fast as well. Now, it's not just simple three-tier web applications that you can move quickly. WeGo is a customer. They are a travel site in the Middle East and Asia Pacific. They were running on SAP. They were having some real problems deploying SAP on-premise and the user experience it had. So they decided to move to AWS. They moved their entire SAP system to the AWS cloud in 3 months. That's pretty good. They also found that they were able to bring new applications to market 75% faster. That's 3 weeks. So instead of it being a month, it took a week. What do you think the benefits are of that ability? You can do more new projects. Your new projects are probably smaller and cheaper, and you probably don't have any massive, massive, massive failures. So a big advantage in deploying that way. And as we've talked about it, speed and agility will enhance those other benefits. Now, the second thing is scaling based on market need. Sometimes when you want to be big or you want to be small, you know what's coming up. That's what we call known variability. Okay? An example of that would be, I think the Boston Patriots or New England Patriots are pretty confident they're going to have postseason games right now. Sometimes it doesn't work, but a worldwide example would be the New Zealand All Blacks are pretty confident they're going to make it to the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup. Okay? Or if you're a retailer in the United States, you're pretty confident that right after Thanksgiving you're going to see a lot of demand. And the question there is, what do you do? Because you have capacity that you need a part of the year, but you don't want to pay for it the year round. So in the past, you really had no choice. You had to have all this capacity, and you'd have it idle when you didn't need it. With AWS, we don't make you operate that way. Now there's uncertain demand. Okay, we're going to do a little inside baseball here. Uncertain demand would be, who would ever expect the Chicago Cubs would make the playoffs? I mean, the last time they won the World Series was 1908. Yet here they are. They're playing the Cardinals in the second round of the playoffs. So, you know, if you were the Chicago Tribune and trying to anticipate how much demand there would be for sports coverage, you might have gotten that run wrong, and now you're scrambling. A negative example, and sorry, Mario, is England might have expected to make the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup. Oh, well, then you're all fine. England might have expected to make the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup, and the Daily Telegraph or the Mail or the Sun or the Guardian might have predicted all this demand for sports coverage, and now, well, sorry, guys. Okay. Uncertain demand can work in both ways. Now, how do you address this? This chart was made by my friend Mike Culver, who passed away about 9 months ago, and we're just going to use it forever because we think he nailed it, and we miss you, Mike. On the horizontal axis, you have time. On the vertical axis, you have infrastructure cost. So let's say you're trying to estimate what your spend's going to look like. You might draw an up and to the right line that's your predicted demand. And this is your best estimate, and you know it's an estimate. You're not sure what you're going to need, but this is your best guess. It's growth. It's good. And then you say, this is the hardware that I need to support this demand. And you're going to buy in chunks, right? Remember, on-premises infrastructure comes in chunks, right? Aisles, rows, racks, servers. You can't add things a little bit at a time very easily. The problem is that actual demand is rarely linear. You're going to go below your line, maybe you're going to go above it, right? So this could be the Cubs going to the World Series, right? Wow, pretty incredible. The problem is you have opportunity costs. So you've paid for this much capacity, and right down here you only need that much. Okay? So you've bought more than you need. The other problem is up here. You're unable to serve customers. Those customers are going to go someplace else. That's not good. That's a problem. So what's the right solution? The right solution is to use the AWS automated tools and virtualization to allow you to always have some infrastructure that's ever so slightly ahead of actual demand, right? And that way you're only paying for just a fraction more than what your customers actually need. And that's an example of scaling to meet market demand. Let's look at two customers that did this. So Six Wunderkinder is a software firm based in Berlin. Their flagship product is called Wunderlist. It's a cross-platform task management app. The customers use it to create to-do lists, task lists, delegate tasks, collaborate with friends and colleagues. It runs on multiple operating systems and devices. They have over 3.5 million registered users, and it's available in 30 languages and 100 companies. Now, they're coming out with a new version of their offering, and they do not know what the impact is going to be. Their infrastructure team, when they were running in their colo facility, didn't know how to meet peak traffic. It was really spiky. And you think about it, if you're big in Europe, okay, you've got a spike during the European working day, but then you move to the US, you've got spikes as the East Coast wakes up and goes to work, and a spike in the Central, maybe a modest one in the Mountain Time Zone, a big spike in the West Coast. That's tough to do. So they decided to move to AWS. They started running between 16 and 39 front-end API servers. That's a big switch. It's over an order of magnitude, 39 at the high and 16 at the low. They also use other services, DynamoDB, EMR, and S3. As a result, they've been able to scale to 500,000 users in 2 months without either overspending or underserving, right? Those are the things you want to avoid, spending too much or underserving your customers. They also found that they can bring new products to market 20% faster. So see the common themes here. They're saving money, they're scaling to meet market needs, and they're moving faster. Okay? Another example is Sonique. Sonique is a customer out of Singapore. They were originally running on their own infrastructure, and they had some problems keeping it up. So they decided to move to AWS. This reduced their OpEx by 60%, and they got their uptime to almost 100%, and they got faster analytics. It took them a month to move. They then decided to come to North America and sell to customers there, and that was great. And then they wanted to go to Japan. What they found out is the latency from Japan, the world's third largest market, to either Singapore or to North America was unacceptable to their Japanese customers. So they wanted to quickly deploy in Japan. Now, normally, if you were on premises or on a colo, you'd have to set up a whole set of new business relationships, a whole set of new contracts. With AWS, they were able to deploy in Japan in a week. I think they could actually do it faster if they had to do it over. They probably took a few extra steps. Okay? Now, what sets you apart? What sets Wunderkinder apart is their software. What sets your company apart? What's your differentiation? Focus on that. Add value to your customers there. One example of someone who focused there is Bristol Myers Squibb. Now, Bristol Myers Squibb wants to get solutions or science, time to science, to market quickly. Two great reasons. One, if they have a drug that will reduce pain or save your life, you want that drug, don't you? Right? The other thing is from a stockholder or organization point of view, the IP around pharma is all time-based, right? You have a patent, and you want to be able to sell that drug while you own it. So a time to solution is very important to them. They chose not to focus on their own IT infrastructure, but instead to focus on time to solution. By running on AWS, they cut their time to run clinical trial simulations from 60 hours to an hour and 20%, so an hour and 12 minutes. It's a pretty good reduction, right? They can now look at which drugs they want to consider going to clinical trial, and they can get that done faster. That's an example of it's maybe saving a little money, but more importantly, the benefit of focusing on what they do best. Another example is Wilbros. Wilbros is an engineering firm. They focus on building pipelines. They've been in business about 80 years. And if you think about the pipeline business, where you put the pipeline is a big deal, right? You want to avoid places with seismic problems. You probably don't want your pipeline running right next to a school necessarily. You want to be careful that you're not in a floodplain and have the risk of a river flooding you out. So you have to be careful about where you deploy it, and it's very, very time intensive to do these calculations. Wilbros was able to move to AWS. Not only did they save some money, they were able to do their pipeline calculations 80% faster. So instead of 35 days, they were able to get them done in 7 days, right? 80% savings. Great example of the business value of moving to AWS. Yes, there are dollar savings, but it's helping take their business to the next level. Okay, let's talk about leveraging what you have. Companies have lots of things. You have data, you have machines, you have intellectual property, you also have people. How can you make your people more productive? Well, a lot of companies have temporary staff or they have new employees coming in. One of these is J&J. J&J operates, Johnson & Johnson operates in 175 countries. They have over 270 subsidiaries and affiliated companies. Right now, they run 120 apps in AWS. They're planning to triple that. But also to launch 25,000 AWS Workspace cloud-based desktops. What's significant about this? Let's say they bought a new company or they brought new consultants on to J&J. And they want those people to be immediately productive. They got a few choices. They can provision a laptop and hand it to them. Well, they have to make sure that laptop's up to snuff and has all the latest and greatest software and security settings. And then if it's a consultant, when the consultant's time is done, they have to take that back, recycle it, wipe it, and move on. They chose to use AWS Workspaces because it makes their new workers, the folks they're merging into J&J and their consultants, much, much more quickly productive. It also enables a bring your own device solution. So if the consultant has a device, they can, you can run Workspaces on that, and you're actually not having to provision something for them. Workspaces runs on tablets, it runs on Macs, it runs on PCs, and it's a pretty powerful solution. It saves money, but it also makes their new folks or their current folks immediately productive. It's leveraging what they already have. Now, you probably have a large existing infrastructure. Maybe Active Directory, you've got some encryption, some backup apps, some management tools. It's not just move everything to AWS right away. AWS will help you use your existing infrastructure and integrate it with it, right? So in the identity and access management or directory management area, we've got a whole set of tools. We've got VPC that lets you integrate with what you're running on-prem. We've got storage gateway for backup. We've got a whole set of tracking and inventorying tools. Now, I got to warn you, when your auditors and your people doing inventory see what we do for tracking and inventory, they may tell you you have to move to AWS. Let me give you an example. How many people here know exactly how many servers they have? Anyone? Okay. You can run a query on AWS and get the answer back in under a minute listing all your EC2 instances. And if you have them tagged as to what cost center they are, which is best practice, you can get that report. And you can then filter by cost center, under a minute. Let's say you wanted to know, give me a list of all the changes that have been made to my on-premise infrastructure in the past 3 months. AWS Config and AWS CloudTrail will do that for you. Pretty hard to do on-prem. When your auditors find out, they may tell you, make my life easier and move to AWS. So it's a great example of leveraging what you already have by connecting all these systems, but you may find that the automation of AWS is a real powerful incentive to move. So let's put it all together. When you add everything up, let's go back to the IDC study. IDC found that in 3 years, someone who invested $1 in AWS got $3.50 in benefits. That sounds pretty good. 3 years, 350, benefits for 1. What happens when you run this over 5 years, though? For 5 years, they didn't see $5 and change in benefits, they saw $8 and change. What's driving that? Well, it's not the same for every customer, so I can't give you one answer, but 2 themes that you'll hear are, 1, AWS continues to add value. For example, we talked about shipping VPC and CloudTrail. The other thing is that the more customers use us, the more comfortable they are applying the automation to solve additional problems in AWS. So if you've wondered, is there a reason to move earlier? Yes, there is. It's to get down the AWS learning curve as fast as you can. So for next steps, I'd encourage you to set up a Cloud Center of Excellence. Anyone have one already? A few? Okay. It should be the folks who came here, right, to came to reInvent, maybe a few more. But set up a Cloud Center of Excellence. Have people that know what they're doing, that the rest of your company can talk to. Then ask yourself, what can you do to leverage the 11 AWS regions, our 30 availability zones, over 50 services now, and the hundreds of innovations to help you? So do a little brainstorming. Say, hey, you know what? We've always wanted to be in Asia Pacific, or we've always wanted to be in Europe. We've always wanted to be in Latin America. And how can they help you lower your costs, move faster, scale based on market needs, and innovate around what you do best, and take advantage of the assets and people you have? Now, to help you out, there are tens of thousands of partners. We have over 2,300 software listings in 30 categories on the AWS Marketplace. Now, you may need help building a TCO or a business model. We've got a number of partners who are trained in how to do this. DataPipe and Business Solutions here in North America, RXP and CloudHouse in Australia and New Zealand, and eMind in Europe and the Middle East. And they're all here, and you should talk to them if you need some help with a TCO analysis or a business model. If you want help on managing your spend, there are 5 ISVs that we recommend: Cloudability, Cloudamize, Cloud Health, Cloud Chooser, and Cloud Checker. They are all here as well, and I encourage you to talk to them, talk to multiple of these ones, and see if they can help you. To wrap it up, let me talk about a case study at Delaware North. Did anyone here hear a vet talk yesterday afternoon about Delaware North? It's worth watching. It's a really great story. Delaware North does concession management. For example, they handle Soldier Field for the Bears. And they moved to AWS, and they predict that they will see $3.5 million in savings over 5 years by moving to the cloud. The details of this are up on the AWS website. It's really a fascinating story. But I think the real benefit is they can now provision a new business in 1 day. IT is no longer the long pole in the tent. So if they wanted to go help at Wrigley Field, assuming the Cubs keep going further and further in the playoffs, they can do that, and IT is not the blocker. Before this move, they could not have implemented a solution in 2 to 3 weeks. They've also found that they have better compliance, better DR, better solutions delivery, right? Think about the compliance benefits of being able to know what all your servers are, what they're doing, what their utilization is. So this wraps up. You can see the business value. There's dollar savings, there's agility savings, and there's a host of other benefits as well. So in summary, AWS can lower your costs, help you move quickly, scale based on market needs. They can help you innovate on what's important to you and take advantage of what you have. If you want more information, our Economics Center is up on the web. It includes a link to the TCO calculator you saw earlier. And we have all kinds of case studies and references, including all the ones I mentioned here. These sessions are already done, but I'll put this up here so you know which ones to go see on YouTube if you haven't seen them already. And I would ask you to remember to complete your evaluations. With that, if Amilcar would come up and help me answer questions, I'm happy to take any ones you might have.